G'day footy fans, welcome back. Carlton versus Bulldogs. Pretty entertaining game in my opinion. Carlton's midfield, are they legit? I think they're going to be a problem this year. They dominated the contested possession. Anyway, I'm going to go through my thoughts on the game. I'm going to go quarter by quarter and then a few key notes at the end. Carlton. Took them a little bit to get some scores on the board. The Dogs got a few early goals. But from the first bounce, Carlton's midfield looked pretty solid. They had two chances where they had forward 50 entries and they should have kicked goals, but they just had one bad disposal in the chain and it caused the Western Bulldogs defence to be able to scramble back. And then with 5 minutes left in the quarter, the Bulldogs, as they can do, score quickly, kicked 2 goals to keep them in touch. And I think the quarter time margin probably didn't do justice for Carlton. But nonetheless, it kept the game pretty exciting. Also in the first quarter, Carlton's ability to move the ball inboard and back their foot skills was pretty good to watch. And I think it caught the Western Bulldogs off guard because their defence didn't quite get back far enough. There were a few goals where the ball went over the back and Carlton were able to either with a small forward, pick the ball up and set up a goal. The Dogs didn't really get a lot of flow on play. I don't think they had many clearances in the first quarter. Even in the second quarter when the Dogs started to win the clearances back, Carlton's pressure stopped them from having that clear, free flow and ability to score. There was one play where the Bulldogs got the ball, moved it quickly on the counter-attack, and then Carlton's defence got back and put on pressure, and then immediately Carlton was clean, they countered and kicked a goal from that passage. So they showed the Bulldogs that they can beat them at their own game with that counter-attack and kicking goals. When you've got players like Mackay and Curnow that can consistently bring the ball to ground, and then you've got forwards that are going to tackle and keep the ball in the forward 50, then you're going to have a pretty good night for your forwards. At least for the first 2.5 quarters, most of the 50-50 marking contests, Carlton were at least able to halve. It looked to me in the second quarter that the Bulldogs' zone seemed to adjust to the way that Carlton were moving the ball, and what the Bulldogs managed to do was to push Carlton wide and basically stop that fast-moving ball movement that allowed them to kick, I think it was 4 or 5 quick goals at the start of the second quarter. So I think the Bulldogs adjusted pretty well looking at that, and that kept them in touch at halftime. At halftime, I was looking forward to seeing how Bevo adjusted his team. I still thought that Carlton were well on top out of the centre, and Cripps and Kennedy and Hewitt and Walsh were able to extract the ball far too easily. In the third quarter, there were patches where the Bulldogs were able to win the ball out of the centre and then kick the ball up forward and keep the ball in their forward line, or at least bring the ball to ground. I noticed that the Bulldogs' tackling pressure lifted in the third quarter, and that put pressure on Carlton. My man, Timmy English, if you haven't seen it yet, I made another video with players to watch for this season. He's in that. Tim English was massive in that third quarter. He had one marking contest deep in the defensive 50 that saved probably a certain goal, and then 30 seconds later, he was up in the forward line, marking the ball again, bringing it to ground, which led to a Bulldogs goal, which kept them in touch, I think maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 points away. And that Bulldogs goal signified a bit of a momentum change, and you felt like the Bulldogs were on top at that point. So that was towards the end of the third quarter. As I was watching it, I was like, it seems like Carlton are being challenged here. It's interesting to see if they're going to change their game style after this goal. But the next centre bounce, I think Pitnet may have tapped it down and Kennedy won the clearance, and Carlton immediately kicked a goal. And this was symbolic of what happened all night, is where you had the Bulldogs challenging, but then Carlton's midfield set the tone and the pace of the game. Also, towards the end of the third quarter, Pitnet had some big moments. He had 5 clearances in the game. He was also important in slowing down that Bulldogs momentum when they were looking to get back into the game in the third quarter. There was one incident where Mitch McGovern shepherded a Bulldogs player on McGovern. He gave away that silly free kick, but his end of the third quarter and even into the fourth quarter, he was big for Carlton. He was in so many contests that were 50-50, and he either brought the ball to ground or marked the ball and kind of just settled Carlton where the Bulldogs looked like they were starting to roll. Yeah, there are a few moments in the last quarter that Carlton fans were probably nervous about. Paddy Cripps and Kennedy set the tone. I think the first bounce, they won it. and allowed for Carlton to set up an inside 50. But then after that, the Bulldogs being the good side that they are and having the ability to score quickly, they're going to put pressure on Carlton. And there were a few moments where the Bulldogs were able to play some good footy where they counter-attacked from forward 50 entries and allowed themselves to score. There was an awesome moment where the Bulldogs, I think, intercept marked or spoiled the ball, and then they counter-attacked. They got the ball to Ugle Hagen, and he just launched the ball into the 50 that led to a Bulldogs goal. Carlton's defence was just caught off guard then, but an exceptional play by the Bulldogs. It looked as though the Bulldogs started to control the tempo in the last quarter as well, and with 10 minutes left, Carlton were looking shaky. Within a few minutes, they missed like 4 or 5 15-metre passes. Stuff that you don't miss unless you've got a heap of pressure on you. I think as a team, they were pretty nervous. Luckily for Carlton, the Bulldogs' kicking wasn't very good towards the end of the game, which didn't allow them to get within that 2-goal buffer that puts a lot of pressure on teams. The Bulldogs' zone was also set up well and caused Carlton to second guess their kicking skills a bit and not just want to kick long to a contest. But overall, Carlton ended up holding on and getting the win, which is pretty big for their confidence this year. I think they'll take a lot out of that. A few game notes. For me, the game was won out of the centre. Kennedy, Cripps, Walsh and Hewitt all had over 30 possessions and 5 clearances. That's massive. If you let 4 efficient midfielders get the ball like that, you're probably not going to win the game of football. Pitnet also had 5 clearances out of the centre, and he was pretty important there. There was also an epic goal by Hannon. Big left foot kick that swung maybe 10 metres back into the goal. That was sensational. What else? Key players. So you had McRae, who had, I think, 7 clearances and 35 disposals. He was important for the Bulldogs in making sure they kept touch. I also think English in that third quarter had some massive moments where he stood up and either halved 50-50 contests, took the mark or set up goals. So for me, he was one of their best as well. And then you also had Libba, who took some half chances and won a lot of contested ball for them, who I've got in their best. For Carlton in their best, Paddy Cripps. You can't go past him, can you? 35 disposals, 2 goals, 11 clearances. He was massive for Carlton. And he looks fit this year. He's an absolute joy to watch. Also Hewitt, flying under the radar, as he did with the Swans, mind you. A lazy 32 disposals. And then Kennedy as well. He was important in the last quarter where Carlton just needed to steady and stabilise and understand that if they control the tempo of the game, that they will win the game. He was also massive at most of the centre bounces, either being a big body for tackling or getting the clearance himself. I'm enjoying watching Kennedy's improvement this year and I'm enjoying what Vossi's done to unlock his ability by putting him inside in the centre more. Sammy Walsh was good, had a lot of the ball. Early on, I think he just wasn't quite up to speed. I think he got caught holding the ball twice, but again, he's only going to get better next week, so pretty interesting to see how those 4 midfielders work together. But they worked together the last few games pretty well. Key stat, Bulldogs had 49 tackles, but when you lose the contested ball by minus 38, then you want to hope you have more tackles than the other side. Carlton had 9 tackles inside 50, whereas the Bulldogs only had 5. And I think that was partially due to Mackay and Curnow and some of their other players able to bring the ball to ground when they weren't getting a mark inside 50, and then some of the smaller forwards and mids were then able to apply pressure and tackle in the forward 50. The contested possession count was plus 38 to Carlton, and it was plus 20 at half time. When I saw that stat at half time, I was interested to see how Bevo would adjust. And yeah, there were moments of momentum where the Bulldogs got back into the game, but to finish the game 38 contested possessions behind is, yeah, pretty interesting. And I think it says something about how the Bulldogs play. It's hard not being at the ground, being able to see exactly how their zone sets up and that kind of thing. But my thoughts are that the Bulldogs rely on some of their pressure to then counter-attack. We saw that a few times this game. Another interesting thing that Stephen May said last week when he was interviewed, he said he was on the field talking to Norton, and he goes, "Are you guys gonna tag Petrarca?" And then Norton said something like, "No, we don't do that," which is interesting. So Bevo's philosophy is that they'll either win the ball out of the centre themselves, or they'll be able to win the ball at some other part of the ground. But when you have players like Petrarca and Oliver, or in this game, Cripps and Kennedy and Hewitt and Walsh, that are just completely carving you up in the centre, then I think that philosophy just doesn't work. So I have a feeling the Bulldogs will be having a look at that coaching setup this week and probably making adjustments when they do face another side that's good at winning the contested ball. Anyway, that's my match review. Enjoyed watching that match. Thursday night footy's epic. Footy's back, which is even more epic. Leave a like, share, comment, sub. Peace out.